everyone. This is Julia from Little Metal Foxes doing the Tool Tips Tuesday. Since Jennifer is out of town, she's actually, I think, in the air somewhere over the US. And I wanted to talk today about swage blocks. And lots of people don't know even how to pronounce them. It's swage, like wage. So I have several different kinds here, and in the photograph I had a couple of metal ones, whoops, like this. So I have a metal one like this and a metal one like this. This one, I'm not sure where it came from originally. It was gifted to me by someone who was upgrading their studio, and this one is a little less expensive than this one. So this one is a rather expensive Italian swage block, and if you look closely you can see these are full hemispheres, and that's actually not trivial. So if you're making chenier or tubing like this, if you're making like heavy walled tubing, you do need it to be half round, and this is beautifully milled and perfect all the way along. So this one has lots of different things going on. It's a swage block on two sides. So it's a swage block here and here. And then it is a dapping block along here. And then it has oval dapping stuff going on here. So this one actually has a lot going on. What's also true about it, though, is that you can't really see this super well, but there are some little burrs on the ends of these notches. So a block like this, let's see if I turn it around, if you can kind of see the burrs right in here and here. So one of these that's a little less expensive is probably more accessible, but you might need to do a little work to finish it a little bit, dress it a little bit. So, you need to get out your files or some sandpaper and smooth those off. But depending on what you're doing, this may be a great place to start, and you can upgrade to the expensive Italian one later. What these are used for. So, as I said, a lot of times they're used for making tubing. And if you are making your own tubing, you're definitely going to need something that will let you bend this little piece of straight, flat metal into a sort of half round shape, and then you can solder it closed, and then you draw it through a draw plate. So that's one of the main uses of a swage block. You can also use them to do things like make heavy band rings, right? So something that might be difficult to bend with a pair of pliers, you can bend by applying force in one of these notches like this. And this is a place where a dapping punch that fits perfectly into one of these slots, this one's a little bit too big, is going to help you out with that, right? So these are metal, those are steel ones. But the one that I actually use the most is the wooden one. So the wooden one looks like this, right? And this one has all different sizes on it. And I actually made these. So you can make these. There are a couple different ways you can make them. The fundamental way that you make them is the same. You have to start with one big piece of metal, and you drill a bunch of holes down it, and then you slice it into two pieces. So that's the fundamental way that you make a swage block, right? You can't drill just half a hole. You have to drill a whole hole, and then slice the two pieces of wood apart. So when I made these, I actually made two of each shape, right? Because, it's like you always get a partner. So, get somebody that you want to help out, and, two of you, friends, do it together. The wood that you want to use would be a hardwood. I think this is ash, but like any good hardwood, it would be fine. You can use for your drill bits, you can just use paddle bits like these. This is just a simple set of paddle bits, and these will fit in any regular twist drill, any drill. You probably couldn't do it with a flex shaft, but like a regular drill press. So they look like this. This is the 1-inch one, right? They have these sharp little bits. What I used to make mine was a different set of bits. These don't have a whole lot of different sizes in the package. So I actually used these. I used what are called Forstner bits. So this is a box full of Forstner bits. Let me show you what this looks like. So this is the largest one, right? So these have cutting teeth along the edge here, and you really have to use them in a drill press. And then as they grind into the wood, they actually pull off these beautiful little curls of shavings that are gorgeous. But you are going to need a pretty heavy drill press to do this. I had a friend who had a drill press, and so I bought the set of bits, and then I went over and I used his big drill press, and I made a swage block for him and one for me, right? Like, he had some of the tools, I had some of the tools, and we both ended up with beautiful wooden swage blocks as a result. This Forstner bits are going to give you a really nice smooth hole. So, because they're designed to cut like door holes and, you know, bits for like high-end woodworking. So they're going to give you a really nice smooth hole, and because they come in a set of, I don't know how many, they're like 16 or something, you have a lot of different sizes. So if you have a woodworking friend who has a set of Forstner bits, F-O-R, S-T-N-E-R, get them to help you out, right? They'll be able to help you out with making the swage block. So I use this a ton for doing things like bending. This is where I use these to bend like these heavy band rings, because then since it's wood, it doesn't damage your metal anyway. It doesn't add any texture to the outside of your metal. So I use them quite a bit for that. And the other thing I use them a lot for, Lion Punch Forge says he's got some. I bet he does. He's got a pretty nice shop full of stuff. I need to go in here and wave at everybody. So what I was going to say is actually one of my favorite uses for the wooden swage block. I actually used the smaller one, which was the one that was cut off. And I use this for stretching rings. So if you have a ring that has texture on the outside, I've also done this to stretch a gallery wire, bezel wire, right? So like gallery wire that's got texture all over on the outside. You don't want to hit it with a hammer to stretch it, because that's going to mess up the pretty and smush all the pretty flutes and texture that you've got on the outside. So instead, what you can do is you can slip the ring onto a regular ring mandrel, or whatever size ring mandrel you want to use to stretch it with, and then take your wooden swage block, find the area where the mandrel will fit into it, right? So you're trying to fit the mandrel into one of the depressions, and you're going to rest this part of the swage block on the table, with the end of the mandrel hanging off. I can't really show you this exact thing because I don't have a table, but pretend my arm is a table. The table would be holding the swage block. The mandrel would be hanging off the end hanging off the edge of the table, and then you're going to take your hammer, rawhide mallet or whatever, and you'll just tap. And as you tap down, it'll tap the mandrel down and stretch the ring. You will want to rotate the mandrel and tap again, and rotate the mandrel again, and sort of keep at this, right? So till it gets it stretched to where you want it. The ring will be stuck on the mandrel because you will have stretched the ring some. So what you'll have to do then is just tap the ring with your rawhide mallet to get it, you set the tip of the mandrel down on the bench and just tap the ring with it, and it'll pop it right off, right? And again, as with anything, if it starts out like this, you're going to flip it over and stretch it for the next time around, because the mandrel is slightly tapered, so you want to make sure that you've stretched it on both sides so that you don't end up with a slightly tapered ring. But that is the main way that I use swage blocks. I love having these wooden ones in my studio. I mean, I'm always kind of like, oh, I need to bend this thing, and you know, especially if you're trying to bend something toward the end of a piece of wire. You can't bend the end very easily, but you can put it down in here. You can hammer on it directly with the hammer. You can put a piece of wire and put the dapping block over it and hammer down on that, on wire or sheet or whatever. Like if you're making cuff bracelets, this will, you know, this is a great way to do that, right? To have the wooden part, because you can have the texture on the metal and you haven't changed anything about the texture on the metal. So those are swage blocks. Swage like wage. So yes, and I did look it up because I knew how to pronounce it, but because I was coming on TV, IGTV today, I was like, oh, you know, I better just check. So I checked the Cambridge University, you know, dictionary to make sure I had the right pronunciation. So yeah, so that's what swage blocks are all about. The less expensive ones are not that bad in terms of expense, and they're actually pretty close in terms of utility to the much more expensive ones. So I would say, you know, get a less expensive one. Figure out if it's really something you need for your work before you spend the money on this. I bought this one because I was taking a class learning how to make tubing. These days, most of us don't make our own tubing, our own chenier. Mostly we are buying it from a supplier, from a mill. And that's great. Like, it used to be the tubing didn't exist as something that you could just buy off the shelf. You had to make it yourself. And there are still times when it makes sense to make your own tubing. If you're trying to make something that's really thick wall tubing, for example, and they don't carry it in that size. The class I was taking was about being able to make tubing. You start with this and then you draw it down to a smaller size, and so you can make tubes that are graduated in size for a set of graduated stones. And you can't buy tubing that has a thick enough wall to set stones in it that is in the precisely graduated sizes that you would need for something like that. So in that case, you know, having the swage block to start making the tube is an important aspect of this. In addition to having the swage block, though, you have to have a way to draw the tubings. You have to have draw plates and, you know, draw tongs and a boat winch or something. So it's like there's a lot more to making tubing than just a swage block, right? Most of us in our studios are just using the swage block to bend, you know, more gentle curves, not to actually make a full-on tube, right? So that is the deal with swage blocks. Lion Punch Forge says he likes making them from purple heartwood. Yeah, I bet they would be beautiful with the purple heartwood. I'm trying to get this to go off. Oops, what's going on? So I'm just checking to see if there are any other comments. Yeah, looks pretty good. Oops, let's get that out of there. So yeah, so the big trick with making a swage block is the bits, and then, you know, it really doesn't, and you can actually, you don't have to use hardwood to start with. Just use a piece of pine, you know, use whatever you've got. Take a 2x4, go get an inexpensive set of paddle bits at the hardware store, drill a hole with your regular old saw, you know, drill, take a saw and cut it out, and then at least you have, you know, the basics, right? Like having something that's nice as this, which is like, you know, professional quality, really big drill press and big expensive Forstner drill bits. You don't have to have that to see if the tool works for you, right? Like, start before you're ready, make a basic one, see if you're really using it a lot. If you're using it, great. You know, get some hardwood, find somebody with some Forstner bits, go big after that. But, you know, start small. Okay. That was pretty much it for my swage blocks, my cool swage blocks, which I'll show you again how they look when they're one piece, because that's just so cool. Because there you go, swage blocks, one piece, and then there you go. Drill a hole, slice it up. Okay, so what do we have coming up? To get my little iPad open. Classes. My Studio Sparks class is going great. I'm having a really good time with that. I just made a whole bunch of little wormy earrings today as one of my sparks. But that's closed. So we'll run that again. We'll probably run a Studio Sparks class again in the fall and have a whole new set of Sparks. So if you missed out on the August Sparks, that's okay. We're going to do it again because I've been really enjoying doing it. It's been really fun making me come in my studio and do stuff that I wouldn't do otherwise, which was the whole point. But coming up later this month, we have Jennifer's doing her whole stone setting series, which is awesome. She's a master of the stone setting, and she's so good. She has so many little tips and tricks. Telling you people, take her classes. She's so smart, and she's so funny. She's really funny. She's really entertaining and informative. You cannot beat that with a stick. So she's got tube setting coming up this coming Wednesday, actually tomorrow. You can still sign up. There's still time. And then prongs and pedestals is coming up on the 18th. These are a whole series of Wednesday evening classes, right? So she's, it's a mix and match. It's a la carte. You can take whatever you want, whenever you want. And then I am doing Make Your Mark stamps and punches. I'm making some stamps on the 21st. So that's Saturday, the 21st of August. So you can make stamps out of like a nail, right? Like you don't have to make a tool steel stamp, right? You can just buy a heavy nail at the hardware store and file some stuff into the end of it, and it works great. However, it doesn't last very long. It tends to mushroom over and it starts to get soft. The edges get soft. So if you want to learn how to make a stamp that you could leave to your children or your grandchildren that will outlive you, come and take my stamps and punches class, because we're going to make, you can make either chasing punches, you can make something that's smooth on the end, or you can make something that's textured, or you can make, something that has a shape. But all of those are options, and I'll show you, how to carve them and, tools that you can use to do that. And then most importantly, how to harden and temper them so that you can use them safely and so that the edges will maintain their sharp structure for a lifetime. So, I confidently expect that the punches I have made will outlive me. And then Jennifer's doing the last Wednesday in August, she's doing her marquee bezel setting class, which is really a fun class. It's this little boat-shaped setting for the marquee stones, and it's charming. So you should totally take it. She developed this just for us, for Little Metal Foxes. She's doing cuttlefish casting too at the end of August, and solder inlay. So there's a ton of fun stuff that you guys can do with her. On the first weekend in September, sort of a back to school thing, we're doing kind of get yourself started in the studio. So Jennifer's going to do her level up your home studio class, which if you're brand new and you haven't got your studio set up, you can set up your studio and she will help you, she'll talk you through like, what are the things you really need? Do you need the expensive Italian Swage block right off the bat? No. You should spend that money on saws and saw blades and a good bench pin, right? Start there. There are some basics that you need. What are those basics? Ventilation, if you're going to do any soldering. Pickle pot, stuff like that. And then even if you've taken that class before, the setting up your home studio, if you want to level up and, up your game, come and talk to her, because she will have a ton of tips on how to do that, how to make it more interesting, how to get more bang for your buck. And then that same weekend, I'm going to do my studio safety and chemicals talk again. It's a lecture format. So, and that's inexpensive. I think it's $10. So, come and join us. You'll learn all about, how to stay safe in your studio. So again, this is specifically geared toward people who are just starting, but not a bad thing for people who are already in the process to revisit. So we're doing level up your home studio, studio safety and chemicals, flex shaft tips and tricks, and then sawing and piercing demystified, and know your torch, little torch essentials. So all of that is happening on that Labor Day weekend. That first, I think it's Labor Day weekend. Yeah, the first weekend. It's the 4th, 5th, and 6th of September. So it's back to school. Get ready to get to work. So that is kind of what's going on for the next month. And then we have other stuff coming up in September too, but you can check out the website. So go to littlemetalfoxes.com and see what we've got going on. So we'll see you in the Fox Den. All right, guys. It's been a short and sweet one because I didn't have anybody else to chit chat with. Usually Jennifer and I get started talking about all kinds of things. But yeah, so anyway, that's it for today. And I will see you next week maybe. All right, bye-bye.